either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And we are finally done with spooky season and on to the most glorious of all months. No, it's not Thanksgiving. It's our third annual Nic Cage November.
How could we miss this?
I have been excited for this, and in our infinite wisdom, we chose another horror movie.
Of course we did.
Well, I chose a horror. We are actually doing something a little bit different this year. Instead of me picking the movies, I picked one and you picked one this year.
I did. I also picked one, and I kind of picked somewhat of a horror, but it's not really a horror.
No, not really.
It's just kind of scary.
Yeah, but I picked this one because, well...
Because you won't stop talking about it.
Yes, exactly. And, scratch it. We've done 2 years in a row we've done a horror Nic Cage movie. Next year we won't.
Yes, but with that said, horror is like a good sweet spot for him. And
it's also our bread and butter, so we kind of get stuck on it for a while.
Yeah, especially with his more recent works, I feel like he's really finding his own in the indie horror genre. Yeah. And that's what this is, so not mad.
Yeah. And so, what movie have I been raving about for the last 2 years, Chris?
Only Color Out of Space.
Yes, because I'm a huge Lovecraft fan.
Yeah, as we have all been told multiple times.
Yes. And 2, it's Nicolas Cage. And this one, as much as because in the past we've done what we've called Nicolas Cage movies. And for our shorts, we've done Nicolas Cage adjacent movies where he's in it. But I would say definitely in this one, he is one of the stars, even though he's not the main character.
Yeah, it is odd because plot-wise, he's not the main character. But everything else in this movie, he is the main character. I really couldn't tell you much about the others from the first watch. Yeah. It takes a few for you to be like, oh yeah, there is that many children. Yeah,
well, and even then, the one who is the main character doesn't really feel like a traditional main character.
No, and this movie also has kind of an interesting way of narrating its way through. Not just with the dialogue narration, but also with who the camera chooses to spend its most time on. And so, granted, the movie would like to tell you that Nic Cage is not the main character, but from a lot of standpoints, he's the main character.
Yeah. And so, for those uninitiated, Color Out of Space is a 2019 Lovecraftian horror movie that was written by Richard Stanley and Scarlett Maris, and was directed by Stanley. It stars, of course, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, who else?
Jolie Richardson, Madeline Arthur, Elliot Knight, Brendan Meyer, and Julian Hillard, as well as a bit part by Tommy Chong.
Yes.
Side little connection that I thought was kind of interesting. Julian Hillard, who plays Jack, is the son of Ariana Martin, who played Cage's daughter in the first movie we did for Nic Cage November, Drive Angry.
Of course. Because honestly, in the world where you run with Nic Cage, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. So, and also Color Out of Space, as I've mentioned previously, is based off a Lovecraft story. It's a 1927 short story called The Color Out of Space.
And this is kind of a big moment for the director and the co-writer, Richard, because he's done some works in the past. He had some horrors, and then he started work on The Isle of Dr. Moreau. Yeah. French. And then was fired.
Yeah, I get into that in just a little bit.
But, this is a pretty big comeback. This is cool. This is a good re-entry into the directing world.
Yeah, and, for a lot of these people, I've seen a couple of them in other movies.
Yeah, I feel like, especially if you're not really into the more niche genre of movies, Cage is going to be the only name you really remember or recognize.
Tommy Chong.
Yeah, I would say though, I feel like Tommy Chong isn't quite as a heavy hitter as Nic Cage. He's
nowadays, in our parents' generation, in 70s and 80s, Tommy Chong was a big name, but
for sure,
he kind of petered out for a while.
Yeah, because I can definitely think of some of the younger people like my brother's age,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they'd recognize him from anything. Not unless they were, like, really into their parents' movies.
Yeah, and the only thing, like, I recognize him from is Up in Smoke, which was his own movie, so...
Yeah, so, like, I kind of like it that way, though, because because it is a low-budget indie horror fic. Having Cage is kind of the only, like, real big call or calling card kind of helps add to this, like, extra level of, like, I'm not putting other people with these faces. Yeah,
exactly. And that's also the reason we kind of consider this a Nicolas Cage movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so, also, this movie is produced by Spectravision, which this is the second movie we've covered produced by them, as well as the other one we did from last year's, Mandy.
Yeah, which I'll get into later on.
Yeah. And so, before we start diving into it, I know I've thrown around the term Lovecraftian horror in previous episodes. I can't tell you which ones to self-plug,
almost
but
all of them.
a good chunk of them, especially our horror ones. But I think this is the best part for us to explain really what it is, because I was over at Elijah's place last week for Lads Night, and we watched it, and I explained it as like a Lovecraftian horror film at times, and he asked for that definition, and I explained it to him, and he's like, I still don't understand it. So that's why I'm also lumping this into this episode.
And this is a good one to explain it, because this isn't just like a Lovecraftian style. This is straight up based off of a Lovecraftian novel. Yes.
And so Lovecraftian horror is often interchangeably used with the term cosmic horror, which is a kind of science fiction horror genre of the weird fiction that deals with the unknowable or incomprehensible, and has much of a less emphasis on shock horror elements. So think like Alien compared to Saw.
Yeah. And another, like, almost key factor that really sets Lovecraftian horror apart is an emphasis on not understanding the fill-in bad guy here.
Yeah, think a lot of undescribable writhing masses or tentacles.
Yeah,
and lots of wormy stuff.
Usually alien, not always alien, usually so vast you're not supposed to understand it sort of concepts.
Yeah, interdimensional, like it's a very vague concept.
Yeah, and it's vague on purpose, which sets it apart from a lot of other science fiction where you could put a science or rules behind fill in the thing here is that aliens or horror or giant shark.
Yeah.
Whereas with Lovecraftian, part of what makes a Lovecraftian horror, even if it's not from Lovecraft, is just not explaining and can't explain.
Yes. And as obviously it's based off the American author H.P. Lovecraft, who did not actually create the genre. That credit generally goes to Edgar Allan Poe, but Lovecraft refined it to what it is today.
Yeah, I would argue that now most people would agree that Edgar Allan Poe really spearheaded what we consider the Gothic style.
Yeah.
And this is kind of in there, but it's definitely its own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, Edgar Allan Poe is still not the originator of weird fiction. It's a like all literature, it's a very murky of like,
oh, sure, and
established it.
And spooky, weird, and kooky has always been a human element.
Yes.
So, but we generally give Lovecraft the name to this genre, mostly because that's most of his literature pieces were very specifically this style.
Yeah.
We're not really going to go into him too much.
Exactly, because as much as I would love to go into H.P. Lovecraft, I think it is best to leave it there for today, just because he deserves his own spotlight episode on his influences in horror films and by extension video games and just...
Oh, sure. And also the realization that just because someone makes something amazing doesn't make them amazing.
No, he is a racist asshole. And,
he's an absolute piece of trash.
Yeah, exactly.
But he created an entire genre.
Yes.
And I think at this point, while I think that recognition has started coming out, it's too late. This is what the genre is called, whether or not he deserves to be named it.
Yeah, exactly. So where do we begin in? Well, I'll go. I want to go into a little bit of how like the adaptation of this story became, because I think where these like old movies, because we bitch about like remakes and Hollywood redoing stuff.
Oh yeah,
but this in itself is an adaptation of something very older, because. So, where it started, SpectreVision had been wanting to make a serious and faithful Lovecraft adaptation, and they had heard that Richard Stanley had been working on a project at the time to bring Lovecraft to the 20th century.
Yeah,
because,
which, I mean, that is a challenge.
It is, especially because his stuff is full of very less than politically appropriate or socially acceptable. I hate the term politically correct. Socially acceptable ideas. And
especially once you get away from his like 2 or 3 really big name stories, you're either getting into realms where people haven't read the stuff, or the story itself is so riddled with problems that it does make it hard to bring it into the new light.
Yes, and especially his earlier stuff, because I will say that his very early stuff was super obsessed with this idea of evolutionary regression, and it's stemmed from this racist idea that all the different races of man came from different apes. Yeah. It was in the very, very early days of evolution, and so
he was also very much on the whole like best race theory train.
Yeah,
which is hard to erase from some of his stories.
Yeah, well, especially since a lot of them revolve around ape-like creatures that regress from
fish-like creatures.
That's something a little more.
He refined it a little bit.
If you are accustomed to the more adult Japanese animations, that you are familiar with. If you
are also a gentleman,
yes, gentleman,
a gentleman of culture, then you will know.
Or ladies of culture. I know women who are into that stuff.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that there also is kind of a problem too, because he. Not just in, like, the problematic things that he wrote, but also the monsters, quote-unquote, that he created, with the exception of, like, 2 or 3, are really hard to re-visualize in a visual medium.
In almost all of his. There's a lot.
There's is, and, like, caricatures of them have been made, and obviously Cthulhu is his most famous. Have we really, like, captured that essence very well? No. He's not the cute plushie that everyone shows, like... In the books, he is, like, undefinably cosmic, blah, blah, blah.
Cthulhu is one of the weird ones that is actually defined because we have drawings from him.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, like, Yoggoth and Shoggoth, like, the unknown tentacle creatures that...
Very true. And then, honestly, this movie, Color, which, from the stories, this monster's name is Color, surprise.
It's undefined. It's a color.
It is.
They don't actually, this is one of the ones that doesn't actually have, like, a name to it.
Yeah, from what I can tell from, like, other fandoms who are much more into Lovecraft than I am, everyone just kind of agrees that its name is Color, spelled the British way.
Yeah. And
that's hard to put to film, because, like, how?
Well, okay, so I did some digging into this a little bit, and I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole because of it too. I spent way too much of my Halloween doing research on this, so there is some magical talk and stuff in this. So we'll get into that later.
Sure.
So in making in exploring what Richard Stanley had done, Richard Stanley had actually released a proof of concept trailer online in 2013. And announced the project, but couldn't find a backing for it because realistically, Lovecraft movies have not done very well.
No, they really don't.
And this also was not the first time this story has been adapted. The first and very loose adaptation, from my understanding, that credit goes to 1965, Die Monster Die.
Yes.
Later, also in 1987's The Curse. Then again in 2008's Color from the Dark. And finally, the only adaptation I am familiar with outside of this one is the German 2010 adaptation, The Color Out of Space, or in German, Die Farbe, which the direct translation is The Color.
I mean, close enough. They got most of the words.
Yeah, it was. What was it? There was. I don't remember the exact translation because it was a little different. It was in Austrian. There was a movie I watched, 3 Days to Die. And the literal translation from Austrian was, in 3 days you will be dead.
Hey, they're accurate.
Yeah, but it's one of those where, like, ours sounds so much better. It's like Jujutsu Kaisen, where, like, if you make the literal translation, it literally is magic fight.
Not wrong.
Not wrong.
Not wrong, but Jujutsu Kaisen does sound better.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and while there's been other adaptations, it's one of those ones where, like, none of those really stuck in, like, a really, like, culturally impactful way like Lovecraft's original works did. And also, like, this isn't a popular Lovecraft short. I mean,
to an extent.
It's one of the higher end ones, definitely.
Yeah.
But, like, I think the casual reader is not familiar with the story.
And even then, the only reason I stumbled upon the German one was because I was looking for something to watch for 31 Days of Halloween, like 2 or 3 years ago when I was starting out doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, on top of that, Stanley also has a history with Lovecraft. His mother actually read the works to him when he was a kid, and it was influential on his childhood.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if cosmic horror is the best thing to get your kid to sleep with, but you know what? You do what you gotta do.
I mean, I have a very accidental, as I brought up multiple times.
Your mother did not mean to do that. Do not rope her into this scenario.
It is her fault. It
might be, but she did not purposely read you Lovecraftian horror.
No, she did not. But yeah, I mean that's where I have a similarity with him. But I mean I get it, but there is a little bit of sweetness to this too, because he mentioned that he read them to her after she was suffering from cancer. So. Which,
I mean, you bond however you want.
Yeah. But, I mean, I can see it. I am somewhat familiar with some of Stanley's works, or his, like, 2 works.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There
2.5.
is... Yeah, there is, like, the Lovecraft influence to it.
Oh, definitely. And his, like, he's also very much, like, coming at this not just from a passion point of, like, oh, I like Lovecraftian, but, like, from a deeper understanding of Lovecraft, which is kind of rare, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And before I really get into it too, that is one of the hardest things of adapting a Lovecraft work is the abstract nature of it, it's been poorly translated many of times, of which the VFX crew are fans of Lovecraft, so that really helped them in translating the film and trying to understand how to bring it to life.
Which makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. Also, as you before we get into it, as you noted previously, this is the first movie Stanley has sought to direct in over 20 years, after being fired from the 1996 production of The Isle of Dr. Moreau, which, side note, won't get into it. The whole production is covered in a great documentary called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, which is how I was introduced to his work and all of that. So
yeah, it's very good.
It is very good. I highly recommend it. It has, and if you want to watch The Isle of Dr. Moreau, it's one of, what's his name? Godfather dude.
Yeah.
Marlon Brando.
That guy.
It's one of Marlon Brando's last roles, and it also has, the girlfriend from Waterboy. I don't remember her name.
Nope.
And the guy who played Remus Lupin.
Yeah, I should know his name, but honestly, all Harry Potter characters are just those people to me.
At this point, nowadays.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, Daniel Radcliffe, you're just Muggle Harry Potter to me. You always will be.
Yeah. So, before we get into color out of space, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, of course, we have contaminated water.
Yes, contaminated water, and... Well, actually, my whiskey is contaminated now, too.
Yes, you very wisely put the contaminated ice cube in your drink.
Yes.
And I have it neat, because that's how we roll.
And I have to have mine a little chill, so... And specifically, we are drinking the Nika Coffee Single Malt.
Because it was in your cupboard.
Because it was in my cupboard, and I've binged most of my shit whiskey, so...
I understand.
Prost.
Prost.
Very nice and smooth.
Yeah, not bad.
I like this one. So, yeah, into Color Out of Space.
Yes.
We open, actually kind of like Mandy a little bit with a...
Yes.
But we open with a forest, but this forest is very spectral as we get a narration to set the scene.
This, whether for good or bad, depending on who you are, this movie has moments of mirroring Mandy.
Yes.
And this is definitely, like, one of the stronger parts of that. I'll get into more of my thoughts on, like, the Mandy versus this movie later.
Yeah.
But I think at the beginning, especially if, like, this is your genre, this definitely, like, helps solidify to you that, like, oh, someone else is making more of these, even if it's the exact same people.
Yes. No, exactly. Because, like, over the Thanksgiving holiday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, it was when I was up in town for a wedding. I had my mom and dad watch Mandy, and it's one of those ones where, like, my mom's like, I don't get it, but I understand why you like it.
Yes.
This is very much in that.
It is in the exact same bubble.
Yes.
Strongly in the same realm.
Yes. And so, what I like about this is, for starters, this sets the tone, and I'm not going to try and compare to the short story because they are completely different animals.
Yes, they really are. Though I will say, as someone who, I got through a good bit of the short story before we had to record, and it is a nice homage to it if you have read it. But don't go in looking for a direct translation.
Yeah, and I purposely avoided rereading it, partly because I lent the book to a friend to watch because he loved Annihilation. I wanted him to watch that because of this story.
Oh, sure.
Or read that because of this story, or because of that movie. And they found it, like, this weekend, and I didn't have time.
That's okay.
So, but I like this because the narrator does set up the tone very much like the story, where this is coming from, like, an old wives' tale in a local folklore. Yes. Because, to give premise, this does a very good job of fusing all the timelines together, whereas in the original story and the German adaptation, the protagonist is being relayed the events that happened years ago. So he's getting a second interpretation of it from the get-go. But from this, and we also get a setting of, like, the foreboding of water, which is one of the big, and they do a great job with the water in this whole movie.
Yes, I agree.
And such an emphasis on it.
And it's also a nicely detailed, like, thought process to the water. Because it's not just talked about, it's not just shown a couple of times, every aspect like this, where we get to, like, start to see the water.
Yes.
Really does add into the element.
Yep. And from here, we cut to a girl performing a ritual. With a,
like you do.
Very DIY, edgy teen witch.
Oh boy, does she look like the edgy teen witch.
Okay, so I'm going to get into this a little bit, because this is where, like, a lot of my knowledge and background into, like, occult ideology and stuff started coming to the surface, and I had to do some little refreshing here and there. But what started it was, I love the Barbie leg pinwheel. I do too. That's where it started off as very edgy. I do want to say, it is very swastika-like. But and I'm going to get into that, because it's not to be confused with the Nazi swastika. And this is an important distinction, specifically with the whole magic aesthetic of this movie.
Yes.
Because they did a really good job with the magic.
Yes.
At least her portion of it. For starters, what she has is called a swastika, which is the left facing, whereas the Nazi one is right facing. And in Buddhism, it's suggested of symbols of Buddha, and it's structurally similar to the Dharma wheel, which represents eternal cycling, as well, and it's at least in parts of Asia. In Hinduism, the left facing is common by connotates the night, whereas the opposed right facing symbolizes the day. And all this will add up to something.
Yes.
As well, her triangle hairpin alchemically is the symbol for fire.
Yes. Thankfully she didn't wear it upside down. That would have confused people.
Yes. Well, it would have been, water at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But fire is cleansing, so it fits a little bit more.
Yeah.
As well, the ritual she is performing, while she's invoking the archangels in the cardinal directions, is part of the ritual for the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram.
Yes.
Although it is worth mentioning, it is a very modified version for the screen, but it works. If you know what you're looking for, it's good.
And it also very much feels like a teenager who has found a book, maybe not a whole lot of books on the subject, read them as far as she possibly can, and is just kind of going with it. Like, this, her magic, her circle doesn't look like she's had any real teaching, but it definitely looks like she's taught herself enough.
She has a very basic understanding, she's working towards something.
Exactly. It very much feels like a girl who would prefer to live in the city with a lot more resources and unfortunately has 2 books.
Yeah, and I will get into that a little bit more. Because while she's performing her ritual, she's interrupted by a dude who's there to survey the land, as we are introduced to Ward Phillips, and we learn that the witch's name is Lavinia Gardner.
Yes.
Fun little things on this. Ward's name is actually a play on H.P. Lovecraft's name,
Yes.
being Howard Philip Lovecraft.
Very good. Very cute.
Yeah. And I do want to point out that when Ward is asking if it's Alexandrian or Wicca, to give a brief difference, because I already went a little too far earlier.
Of course you have.
It is a little bit more complicated. The 2 schools of magic he's referring to are Wicca, which is a diverse group of belief systems that are based around ancient pagan rituals and came about with 20th century motifs. And for its theological structure, and its rituals were originated in 1954 by Gerald Gardner.
Yes.
And it is super diverse.
It is incredibly diverse.
Whereas on the other hand, Alexandrian Wicca, they're both forms of Wicca.
They are.
Comes from the 1960s and was originated by Alex Sanders and his wife Maxine Sanders.
Yep.
And takes a little bit more of, if it works, use it approach, which is somewhat akin to chaos magic, which is a whole other rabbit hole that I'm not going to get into, which I've tried reading a little bit here and there, but it's a little too advanced for my understanding.
Yeah, I feel you.
But I also bring up all this because the belief systems are rooted in, yet again, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. But that is for another day. And actually, we should probably do a movie on Aleister Crowley at some point, because I would love to do that.
We definitely should.
So, long story short, Aleister Crowley used to be part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He wasn't a fan of it because they wouldn't let him advance. So there was a whole magical war of them changing the locks on each other.
Yes.
Just a dumpy bunch of British old men doing this shit.
It really was.
He split off, did his own thing, and he became the grandfather of modern day Satanism, which is a whole other rabbit hole to go down. Not for this movie.
Not for this movie. I do like this little tiny, sneak in, though, because while it's not necessary for the rest of the movie, not really, because while, there's definitely the roots are all there and for the most part look good, this is a Lovecraft movie. They can kind of do what they want with the magic as long as they stick to their own rules. But Lovecraft was really into adding these elements to his works, and so it's a really nice little nod that they went ahead and added in what he would have considered standard knowledge for his works. Yeah,
because his works deal with, on top of cosmic beings and stuff, some of his works deal with a lot of alchemy,
he was definitely
astral
very
projection.
interested in...
Oh yeah, very occulty. I mean,
he was very occulty.
Yeah.
And, he was also the kind of occulty who didn't necessarily prescribe to one style and would take it from a lot of different places. Granted, he was never trying to create his own, necessarily. That was for his cosmic gods. That's what he was doing. But he did like to pull elements from all of them, and he would expect you as the reader to kind of know that.
Yeah, well, and yes and no. So Lovecraft in his writings, he started off doing a lot of just solo stories, and then started incorporating them into a lot of other stuff and referencing other things like Arkham, and which this movie does a lot of too. But a lot, and for me, the biggest culmination of all his work is Dream Quest for Unknown Kadath.
Yeah.
Where he pulls from a bunch of other little stories that, if you hadn't read anything up until that point, you would be completely lost trying to read that alone.
He definitely felt like he was trying to not just make, a handful of stories that all lived in the same realm, but, connected things in a unique way.
He accidentally created a Marvel universe,
He really did. And then once he realized he had done so, he did enjoy that he had done that.
Yeah, and created a living body that people worked with, which...
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's going too far into his stuff. I love Lovecraft. I'm sorry. Not sorry, actually.
We wouldn't be watching this if you didn't.
I mean, we'd be watching it regardless, because it's horror.
It is horror.
And so, from the lake, we transition to a farm of alpacas that all this setting is trying to push us even further of isolation from the remoteless, which
I mean, I don't know if alpacas to me scream isolation, but I understand where they were trying to go. Yeah,
but like we got a scene of like a valley and
sure. The
big hills.
The panoramic shots are very.
It's a farm setting.
Very much so.
It's old school like woods farm setting.
Yeah, it definitely has like 13 Colonies style panoramic shots happening.
Yeah, think of like establishing shots for like The Witch by Robert Eggers.
Yeah. Very much the same.
But also, the house sets it apart as being very old world tone because this film was shot in Portugal.
Of course it was.
We got into
so beautiful.
We got into the wrong business for travel. Like
we
all
really
these movies,
did.
like we watch, it's like, oh, that's nice. That looks like Oregon. Nope, Portugal. Nope, that was Spain. That was Italy. It's like motherfuckers.
Yeah, but can you blame them? The rolling shots look great. The scenery is all just superb.
I can't remember. Wasn't Mandy shot in Portugal too? Or
I can't remember.
It was in Europe.
It was definitely not here.
Yeah, and so I do. Also want to note that once we start getting into the house, it is very angular.
It is very angular, but it doesn't necessarily create too many problems, I don't think. I think, if anything, it just adds a nice, like, framing to the piece, which is a nice contrast between the outside world and also the blobs to come.
Yes. Yeah. And so, and the reason I haven't, as much as I would love to get into the architecture, like,
it's an old house.
It's there, but also, like...
They don't really harp on it a whole lot.
No, but also I do want to kind of dispel an architectural myth of, like, we were know-it-alls of shit. My residential knowledge is a lot of American architecture.
Yeah.
By international, I mean modernist architecture and...
sure.
American classicism.
And, like, I have some, but that's just because personally I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't say it's, like, a strong point. It's just like, ooh, cool picture. I'm gonna click through you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but they do a nice job of not really trying to set a place too hard, because while the house definitely, if you wanted to pick it apart, you could.
Yeah.
Same thing with the landscape. If you really wanted to pick it apart, you could, but it's also very easy to gloss over that and just let it be in wherever you felt like it should have been.
Yeah.
Because they don't really, like, spend a lot of time talking too much about the house. Like, it's just the house. They live here.
Yeah.
Or, like, the landscape. Yeah, we get some with the news anchors later on, but, like, it's just kind of the landscape.
Yeah, there's references. If you're familiar with Lovecraft's work, it's East Coast.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those things where, like, because it's Lovecraft, you've already set yourself where it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Kind of like a vampire movie, you're gonna be in, like, one of two places, New York or Transylvania.
Yeah, or California, or no.
Chicago. I don't know where else vampires live.
I'm trying to remember where Lost Boys is set. I thought that was California.
Probably. Everything's in California.
Can't see California without Marlon Brando's eyes. Actually, my brother and I were listening to that when he picked me up from the airport a couple weeks ago.
Very nice.
So, yeah, that's why that's stupid. I like that song, but that's why that's stuck in my head. But so, anywho, back to The Color Out of Space.
Yes.
The father is waiting on the porch, and as the daughter comes in, and we get a little bit of a setup of, like, the family dynamic where the family's a bit odd. There's a stoner brother and wicked daughter. The mother is a workaholic, kind of. The dad is kind of that cool dad of, like...
He's into alpacas. He's weird.
I dig this dad.
I mean, I do too. But he's not a normal dad. He believes alpaca... He's not just into alpacas. Alpacas are the future.
Yes. Which, at the time when this was coming out, like, the alpaca... You
Googled it? Of course you did.
I researched this. Alpacas were expensive at the time. Like, a mating pair was in the tens of grands.
I mean, yeah, alpaca are definitely, like, a luxury animal. I won't call them the way of the future, though.
Not in the way he's wanting.
No, he's like imagining everyone owning alpaca in the future.
Yeah. But it really sets up the dynamic of dad being cool dad of, like, shh, I won't tell your mom if you just...
Oh, you're smoking again? I used to do that when I was your age.
Yeah. Because the bro is actually in the shed smoking.
He is totally in the shed smoking.
Which I do want to say, like, sibling dynamic in this movie.
It's better.
Good writing.
Yeah. There's a few parts where the family dialogue gets a little clunky for me.
Yeah.
But as far as sibling interaction, very solid.
Yeah.
No awkward, hey bro, what's up, sis?
Yeah, it's
like,
it's just insult slinging back and forth to each other.
Granted, like, there's a few parts where you're like, why are we talking to each other?
Yeah.
But, like, there has to be dialogue. Like, it's a movie. They can't just have them awkwardly walk in and be like, sup, fucker, and then close the door. It's not that kind of movie. That
happens, but it's not.
Yeah. But like, this movie, while having some parts that are easy to laugh at, like, it takes itself very seriously.
Yeah.
So, like, we're not going to get a, like, hard establishment of this family, I don't think.
Oh, yeah. No. And from this, we also get, like, this weird... We get this establishment that they have another sibling who's even younger, because he's staring at a well, because he's a weird little kid.
Yeah, like you do.
Yeah, I mean, kids get obsessed with stupid little things.
Yeah, I don't know how many of my children I'd be like, yes, go stare at the well, and Inuyasha your way right on through that shit. But, you know... these are cool parents who work in the attic and are really obsessed with llamas, so...
Yeah.
Same sort of parents who are, like, Coraline. Just really into letting your kid play with the well.
Yeah. And it's our first emphasis on the water.
This is true. And, like, there is no better, like, comparison other than, like, a straight-up lake in the backyard, which would have been a little bit much.
Yeah. It's like the whole TikTok shit that's going around of, like, guys are so happy by the simplest thing, it's just a dude throwing a rock, because yes, throwing rocks is fun.
Yes. I think everyone can agree, throwing rock, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, make big splash, very good.
Exactly, yeah. And so from this, we cut to dinner where they are having cassoulet.
Yeah, yes.
Which the daughter remarks is, she bitches because it's... I love this because she is such a teenage contradiction.
Yes.
She is bitching because it's French food, and because of that, it's peasant. But she wants McDonald's and mystery meat. But at the same time, she is not wrong. And because I'm the nerd.
Uh-huh. Tell me all about the French food.
I'm not going to go super into it because there is a lot more to what than what I'm about to say. There is a lot more. Cassoulet is a slow-cooked casserole meal that has meat and beans generally. Your favorite. Your favorite's peas.
I do love peas best, but I do love a bean.
And it's named after the earthenware pot with slanted sides that its name comes from, that it's cooked in, or normally cooked in.
Oh, we have something similar here in the Midwest. We call them casseroles, and it's because we bake them in a casserole dish.
Yeah. Same basic thing. Again,
I think you just Frenchified a casserole. Yeah. Or the French fried a casserole. I don't know. Everyone's got a casserole, I feel like.
Yeah. For those who aren't really familiar, a lot of French food that we think of is very peasant food.
Yeah.
That they refined and made better because it's French.
Yeah.
And I've found another episode to insult the French back to back.
There was also, though, like, a revival of, in France, of countryside and cottage cooking as, like, a way to get back to their Frenchness, if you will, and thus export to tourists who then took it home and went, aha, I love this shit.
Oh,
yeah.
I dip it in butter, call it, I don't know.
I don't think they dip it in butter. I think they just eat it.
Yeah.
I think you just eat the baguette.
I'm channeling Julia Childs. Oh, they cook it in butter.
Oh, yeah, no, nobody on this planet cook with more butter than Julia Child.
Paula Deen.
No, I think Julia's got her beat. I have cooked some of both, and like while Paula Deen has a lot of butter, Julia Child's idea of vegetables is to steam them and then put like a whole stick of butter on it. And that's it. That's the dinner.
Fascinating.
I mean, it was a different time period.
Butter on everything.
Oh, hell yeah.
And so, in this part, we learn, because everyone's sitting at dinner, they're waiting for the mother, who is obviously supporting the family.
Oh, yeah, she's running this alpaca farm.
While we look back at the scene before, as the dad, carrying it very laid back, because he's like, well, it's time for dishes, or I have the perfect wine for this. I
mean, he definitely is, like, not only trying to be, like, the cool dad, but also, like, trying to really embrace his new slow life. Like, he moved to the country not to, like, have space or the land. He wanted the quote-unquote slow life.
He's trying to be cultured.
He's trying to reconnect with the land, you know? But, like, not necessarily in, like, I want to grow all my own food and can it way, but, like, in the whole, like, I'm outdoors, sort of mindset, which is also fine, but like...
It takes a very special person to actually live that kind of lifestyle.
Yes, it does.
Which is why I have learned I want to be a gardener and not a farmer.
There you go.
Yes. And so, well, even though at the dinner we're learning more of the family dynamic and issues, in classic Hitchcock bomb theory, we know that things are not going to be going well for very long.
No, and like, the dialogue for most of this movie is pretty solid. Mm-hmm. This dinner room dialogue feels awkward, and I do wonder if there wasn't a scene before this to explain that, like, maybe we don't eat dinner together regularly.
So, not necessarily that. I think they eat dinner regularly. I think the issue is it's such a contrast of what's to come, because it's very much so like a Rockwell painting of like a family eating dinner or the cafe. It's picturesque of... It is, and it's very stiff compared to all of the characters' characteristics. Yeah, it's the weird kooky family together, which we're also seeing in this part continued emphasis on water, which I also learned through this that family drama are apparently Cage's favorite genre.
That makes a lot of sense now that you say that.
Yeah, which he
spends a lot of time playing the angry father.
Yeah.
Or the father trying to be a good dad.
Yeah.
Who's not.
No. Which part of the reason he was kind of brought into this is because he voices love for this genre and with producers Elijah Wood, Daniel Noah, and Josh C. Walter on the set of Mandy. Which it is very weird for me saying producer Elijah Wood.
I mean, get used to it. He seemed like he did really well, so...
Yeah, I mean, Spectravision's one of his production company.
Yeah, but, you know, I think there'll be more.
Oh, yeah. And so, as night comes upon the land, something from the sky starts to descend.
Banana.
A color of some kind.
Yeah.
And so, I looked up this.
Okay. Because
this is where I wanted to talk about the color. Because while the family's doing their shit, Dad's getting it on with Mommy after obvious long time.
Yes.
Daughter is sleeping with food all around her. Son is playing video games. And Jack is freaking out like children do.
I mean, accurate.
Yeah. I was curious why they chose magenta. I originally wrote pink. Someone pointed out that it's magenta.
It is specifically magenta.
I do not know colors.
That's okay. But I do think that, like, whether or not you can properly see the color, like, going through the research of this, like, they were very specific and they chose magenta.
Yes. And I was curious because the German version also uses a similar color.
Yes.
And I had to do a bit of digging.
Of course.
Magenta does not occur naturally.
No, it does not.
It is extra spectral color, which means that its hue is not associated with the monochromatic visible light. It is only perceived when it's interacted with optical rods, detecting red and blue, and our mind interpreting it as magenta.
So theoretically, a color you can't, like, actually see.
That technically doesn't exist. Because in the book, or in the short story, it's described as an indescribable color.
The color that doesn't exist, which we've all fantasized about.
I have never fantasized about a color that never exists.
I had a very arty upbringing.
I did too, but my fascination with colors kind of died in middle school.
See, we had an assignment where we were tasked with creating a color no one had seen, and then we're told that the task was futile after we had turned in our assignment.
I got diagnosed with color blindness.
I don't think our school would have cared.
Yeah.
We went to very different schools.
Very, very much. Oh, yeah, no, I would have been in middle school at that point.
Yeah.
Because my middle school started in 5th grade.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so, also in this scene, this is probably the last one I'll have a lot of little references because there's a fuck ton in this movie.
Oh, of course.
The daughter has in her bed the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley,
yes,
which...
I mean, a good reference for those who notice.
I'm in the middle of reading it. It is fucking dense and...
It's a little dry.
It's very dry, but it's good. It's not bad poetry.
No, I mean, In chunks,
it's poetry, yeah.
In chunks, it's doable. I don't know if I'd want to read it cover to cover in one go.
Every man and woman is a star.
I mean, that's very nice.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's
inspirational
nice poetry.
Inspirational.
Yeah. She also has the Necronomicon, which someone went into a detail about, like, which specific version of the Necronomicon.
Yeah,
Necronomicon is not really a book. It's a book created by H.P. Lovecraft for his stories to, like, connect the worlds through this ancient lore and knowledge to connect to the elder gods. Blah, 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 blah.
I think the, like, movie was probably just being like, look, Lovecraft. Haha.
Yeah. And also Joseph Campbell's Goddesses, which I need to read more of his work.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it does kind of, like, really solidify the, like, these are probably her 3 books that, like...
She's got, like, 5 around her, but they're, like, stacked.
Yeah,
so.
like, she doesn't have a ton of, like, varied information, but she has the core elements.
Yeah, she has the basic reading for magical knowledge.
But boy, wouldn't it be helpful if she also had that, like, Magic 101...
Or she had, like, The Satanic Witch by Anton LaVey.
Yeah, literally any other, like, reinterpretation of it, because she's pretty much having to interpret this magic herself.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, for a teenager, she did it.
It's very in line with chaos magic of interpreting and what works for you, which is why I argue she is wrong. Her magic is very much more Alexandrian than what she says.
But again, it's an unnecessary level of depth that they went into, but really, like, if you're gonna deep dive this movie, is a delightful little treat, because later on, all of this adds into, like, she probably fucked up a little bit.
She's trying to find issues for something that doesn't work.
Exactly. Or, you know, doing the whole, like, oh, I can control it, I know what I'm doing. No, you don't.
You have no fucking control.
You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And also, the Bros Wall says, no flesh shall be spared.
Delightful.
Super metal.
Yes.
But it is also a nod to director Richard Stanley's first feature film, Hardware, where a killer robot named Mark 13 quotes the line.
Of course Mark 13.
Because it is a internal reference and, in a way, perversion, kind of like how the left, like flipping an image and just changing words a little bit changes the magical intent, which that's a whole other rabbit hole. But it's an excerpt from Mark 13:20 in the Bible, and except that the Lord has shortened those days, no flesh should, I typed that fucking wrong. Should be loved. I butchered that probably.
Maybe not.
But for the elect's sake, whom he be chosen, he has shortened the days.
In other words, short speak, you did this to yourself, fucker, I will not forgive you.
Yes. Also, the game he is playing is a universe simulator called Universe Sandbox 2.
Oh, he's playing God. How cute.
I mean, I know plenty of people who play Sims.
Oh, yeah, but, like, if this movie is full of, like, aha, did you catch it?
Yeah. It's one of those kind of movies where, like you said, why I'm kind of stopping there a little bit, just
because you could go through this scene by scene if you wanted to. You really could, which is part of the appeal to this movie.
Yes, and I'm not doing a 3-hour review on this movie.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and also, last little bit,
the
father says his wife will be his golden lady, which is probably a play off of Crowley's Scarlet Woman. But it's also a Stevie Wonder song. I'm leaning more towards the Stevie Wonder song.
I'm also leaning more towards the Stevie Wonder song.
But there is the Aleister Crowley reference because there's so much of it worked into this movie.
Very true. I will say, though, that the Stevie Wonder song makes more sense, especially later on.
Yes.
Because it's just a direct quote from the song.
Yeah. And so, while everyone's doing their own shit, a magenta space turd falls from the sky as Jack becomes catatonic.
Whoops.
Oopsies. And so from there, everyone kind of freaks out, regathers, like, oh shit.
I appreciate the style of panic in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It does a nice job of kind of going through all of the different styles of panic without, like, having the chaotic overlap that a lot of movies end up with.
Yeah.
We get a lot of, like, oh, what should we do? Go do this. You get that. Silent panic. But it's not like the comedy slapstick of, like, Home Alone, where everyone's panicking differently at the same time.
Yeah. Or like, Clue.
Yes. And there's no Clue panic.
Yeah.
But there is a nice, hearty, like, level of panic.
It's a grounded panic.
It is. At the beginning.
Yeah. And so, in the morning, the cops in the mayor arrive.
The one, yeah. You're in a small town when the mayor shows up.
Also, there's something I caught in the scene that was a little bit weird for me.
Okay.
What mayor do you know that has Secret Service like that?
I would hope at least, like, one of the big city mayors, but probably not that many.
Yeah.
I live in a tiny town.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have a mayor. I probably do. I have no idea who it is.
Same here.
It's got to be one of my neighbors.
Well,
there's not that many people to choose from.
But can you have them? Can you imagine them having like a Men in Black style Secret Service? Because
of where this is located, and like because of the like idea that the family is portraying of like, oh, we're living very far off the land. Like this is probably a town comparable to, if not smaller than the one I live in.
Okay.
Which means that there is one guy who is the cop / sheriff. Their wife probably rides around with them. Just cause. There's, like, nothing happens.
Okay.
We have a mayor. No idea who it is. It's probably been the same guy for the last, like, 80 years. And we'll find a new one when he's dead. And it'll probably be his son, because he already knows how to do it. Like, there's not a whole lot of, like...
Okay.
So it is weird as heck that this mayor has Secret Service of any kind.
Yes. I'm going to get into some of the ties I started seeing in this.
Okay.
Because Stanley is, from what I can tell, a big fucking nerd. And I say that with the utmost respect.
As a fellow nerd, yes, I agree.
Yes, because I went too far into this too. And so while they're there, Ward just kind of shows up for no reason and kind of states the obvious of like, do you know what it is? He's like, oh, it looks like a meteorite. No shit.
I mean, you asked.
Yeah. But also there's a little bit of integration and widening of the world as he mentions Arkham.
Yes, he does.
The closest town, which is why it's a bigger town than you think it is.
Well, they say that, but they also mention it's an hour drive to a hospital.
To Arkham.
Yeah, the local hospital.
Arkham's a larger city, though.
Yeah,
They're so far out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, small town, hour drive to a hospital. Sounds about right. Sounds comparable.
Yep. And in this, Nathan, the father, which I've neglected to say their names up until this point.
Nic Cage, the father.
He offers Ward to come in, let him check on the alpacas, where he proceeds to milk them.
Yeah, I mean, it's Nic Cage milking an alpaca. What more could you want?
So, I did research.
Of course you did.
I
forget that people have to look up things about alpacas. Tell me what you learned.
I spent a little too long on this, too.
Okay. What did you learn about alpaca cheese and milk?
Does not exist.
Yeah.
All the blog messages and forums I found were like, you technically can, but why?
It's the equivalent of milking like a cat. You could. I don't recommend.
Yeah, well, 1, they're hard to herd. 2, they don't produce a lot of milk. 3, it's Yeah. And like, it's just not, it's not feasible. They just don't produce a lot, and that's...
Yeah, there has to be like a profitable amount. Otherwise, you're wasting your time, which for an alpaca farmer, theoretically, time and effort equals money.
Yeah.
Part of the price of the animal.
They're a fiber animal.
They are. You can eat them. Not recommended really either. Maybe as like exotic jerky.
I stopped my rabbit hole before eating them, and now I am curious.
If you really want, there's like tons of places that do the weird like jerky. That's probably where you're gonna find it, because like most creatures who produce wool, you're gonna want it to live as long as possible. And as long as possible in the like meat world usually means not as tasty. Thus meaning we don't bother feeding it to the peoples. We feed it to the other things.
I love veal.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the exceptions.
Yeah.
And like we've recently started to see a rise in like quote unquote retired dairy cows.
Oh. I was so
terrible retirement plan for a dairy cow, but understandable.
I was so disappointed. I went to this taco shop. My friend hyped it up. The tacos were very good.
Okay,
I was in Bend for the weekend for a wedding. And so they had beef tongue tacos.
And what were you hoping for?
Well, I got up to the cashier, and they said they had just recently removed them.
Oh, I'm sorry. If it makes you feel better, I think I know a place near here that sells them.
I'm very curious. I've been exploring stuff gastronomically lately when I can.
I'm so proud of you.
Proud of myself too.
Yay! Yeah, don't put alpaca high on your list of things to look for.
Yeah.
I mean, the jerky form. But yeah, they're a wool producer, so, like, this is, like, it kind of, like, if you know, kind of like the whole cow tipping joke in movies.
Yeah.
So, like, this kind of adds another layer to, like, this man doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
I just remembered why I was going to buy beans this weekend. I got Laugh to eat the bean sandwich.
Ah, bean sandwich. Heck yeah.
He was not a fan of it. But I said maybe you should add Worcestershire sauce to it.
Oh, Worcestershire makes everything better.
Yeah.
I personally am a ketchup fan. Beans, ketchup, bread. Delicious.
I will suggest that to him.
Ketchup makes everything better. Truthfully, the creme de resistance is Western sauce, but, like, nobody sells Western sauce. Not Russian, not red dressing, Western sauce.
I did not know about this stupid sauce until I came to hear that is, like, the only sauce you eat.
It is. I buy it in bulk. I'm the only one making my Walmart restock it. I have no doubt in my mind. I bought more this weekend. Like, I was gonna buy the one, and my dear husband was like, why? You're gonna just drink the bottle in a week. Get two. So we don't have to come back so quickly. I
don't think when I've been shopping with you guys, you've ever bought just one.
You can't, because then they won't start buying more. It's kind of like having to find ladyfingers in this godforsaken Midwest.
The fuck are ladyfingers?
They are British cookies used to make tiramisu.
Huh.
Or they might be French. I don't know. But they're not popular here. But they are the best thing to make tiramisu with. And so there's only one store in this town who sells them. And so when people get the desire to make it, you have to go fight other old ladies for the one box of ladyfinger cookies.
Well, you enjoy picking on decrepit old women.
You know what? It's okay. I'm one of them. We're gonna blend right in together.
Yeah. And so, after the alpaca milking,
so awkward.
We established that there's a little mother-daughter conflict because,
But let's be real, why wouldn't there be? We've got a business mom and a witchy girl.
To be
and she's a teenager.
Well, to be fair, her relationship with Ward is a little creepy because, like, when he shows up, she's like, "You're looking at my legs, aren't you?"
She's a teenage girl being edgy.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, because of the movie, because it's horror, it reads, like, extra. But, like, she's that creepy teenage girl from The Breakfast Club, so... You haven't seen it, have you?
I've seen The Breakfast Club.
Okay. She's that witchy kid from The Breakfast Club, but, like, who actually did her research.
Yeah, I went down a little rabbit hole of, like, classic teen dramas. I went through that.
That one's high on the list.
Yeah, that one and, like, 16 Candles.
Also a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from here, Ward is then sent to the squatter Ezra, who is a very well-informed electrician who is living off the grid.
Bless this man. He is everything a squatter/prepper could want to be.
Actually, I low-key dig his sheds.
I do too.
I know you have a shed that is supposedly I'm allowed to venture out to at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I poke for snakes before you get started, but yeah.
I'm more worried about ticks.
Oh, there's lots of those.
Yeah.
Those are gonna happen. The snakes are a maybe.
Yeah, but he does remind me a bit of Radagast.
He reminds... Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's the hair styling choice of just, like, nasty, matted, but also hair too long.
Yeah. For those who don't know what I'm referencing Radagast the Brown from the Lord of the Rings franchise.
Specifically the movie version. Without the poop in his hair.
Yeah, and the bird nest.
Little less bird poop.
There's poop of some kind
There's
somewhere.
definitely still poop in the hair, just not as much.
Yeah. But this is played by Chong. Tommy Chong.
Yes, this is very well portrayed.
Which, he did mention, this is his very first horror role because he stayed away from it because of the bad karma. But
I can't blame him.
But he did mention that he is, in this role, he is just himself and not his up-in-smoke Chong.
Okay. I can appreciate that.
Also, other thing I love about this movie, it is inappropriate in a good way compared to other Lovecraft stories with cats with a very inappropriate name.
Very true. Very true.
I love the pussy named G-Spot.
Yeah, okay. That feels clever, and also, like, it feels like the joke that a, like, reimagined Lovecraft would make.
Mm-hmm.
If he had been a morally better person, that would have been what he should have named his cat.
Yeah, and also another joke in this movie, no one can find the G-Spot.
I know, the cat is forever missing. It is a really solid cat name, to be honest with you.
It is, it really is. But also, I lied, I'm sorry.
Go into depth about it.
No, there's another nerd song. It's not about a pussy named G-Spot.
Oh, okay, good.
It is, I had to look it up, because he mentions, you guys want some Adam's Ale.
Oh, sure.
Adam's Ale, because I'm not familiar with it, and so now you shall all be indoctrinated to it, is a colloquial allusion that originated in the 19th century temperance movement and referred to unadulterated water, i.e., all what Adam was supposedly drinking in the Bible.
That's a polite way of saying dirt water.
Yeah.
The man is sipping out of puddles on the ground.
Yeah, which it's actually a good analogy because, like, the water is gross looking and Ward is rightfully worried about it.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a really nice, like, reminder of what the focus of this movie is supposed to be, because we were distracted by the alien egg meteor. Back onto the fear of the water.
Yeah.
Remember, that's what you're scared of. You don't know why, but you are.
Always be afraid of water.
It will kill you.
But it
slowly
also,
but surely.
Yes.
Slowly oxidizing you.
I like that theory, though.
Do too.
But yeah, I mean, it's a weird moment to, like, introduce, like, how kind of quirky the family really is too, because, like, they just have a resident squatter. It's just like, yeah, he's here.
I feel like he came with the property too. I don't feel like this man, like, was someone who knocked on their door. This feels like when they bought the property, which wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
The owner was like, by the way, there's a man living in the woods. He's nice. I can't get rid of him. He's your problem now.
It's almost like they abandoned a relative, and it's like, alright, cool, we got new family.
Yeah, but this man doesn't care.
Yeah.
No, he is living his squatter dreams in the woods.
I have a feeling the mom is annoyed, but...
Probably, but also she's so busy with the failed internet connection that she hasn't had time to deal with the squatter man.
Yeah. Yeah. He has an interesting spot in this movie.
He does, and, like, I also appreciate that for once, the weird squatter man living in the woods, while weird and creepy, isn't immediately put in, like, the awkward camera angle and filtering light that, like, you're like, oh, he's a murderer.
He's not, what's the movie with, what's his name? Mel Gibson.
Oh.
The one where they say he's a pedophile, but really he burned his face heroically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one that was, but yes.
Yeah, it's not that feeling.
No, this one very much just feels like, oh, there's a man living in the woods.
Yeah.
You kind of forget that they own the place, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You kind of forget that this man is squatting on their property. He just lives here.
He's cool. I like him.
Yeah, this is our neighborhood squatter.
His door has an elevator panel on it,
yes,
too,
it
which
does.
is great. Yeah. And so, from this, a night storm arrives, and even that is tinted magenta.
It is. The coloring in this movie is beautiful, very much like how Mandy's was. But this one plays where Mandy was trying to, like, push the colors.
Mm-hmm.
This one is incorporating them nicely, as in, like...
And gradually, too.
Yes. And the coloring, while obviously modified, it does feel, like, almost believable. Like, okay, if I saw the magenta cloud roll in, I'd take a picture of it,
yeah,
but I wouldn't call the local government.
I would say, because this is in the range of outside of my colorblindness.
Okay.
I'm not one of the stereotypical colorblind. I've got a weird in-between range.
Sure.
But this is one of the ones I can see. I can't imagine, like, someone with, like, the standard red-green colorblind enjoying the color of this movie.
It would be very interesting, but
Yeah.
I think it's still possible because later on the imagery works.
Actually, I should have sent this to colorblind friends and asked them. I know a couple people.
You should test to see what they think, because I would be interested, because there is some subtlety that would be lost.
Yeah.
But because how this movie chooses to do visuals, I think they could still have fun with it.
It makes me think of, there's, because of course it's TikTok now.
Everything.
It's a guy who's like, I called my mom and I'm like freaking out about like buying a shower curtain because my girlfriend asked me to go and buy it. And she's like, why are you freaking out? And she's like, she asked me to buy a red and blue one. I can't see that shit. What the fuck is seafoam? Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah. The fun games you get asked when you're partially colorblind. But outside of this, we go to Ward's tent, who's set up his own camp.
Yeah.
Which, nice tent. Impressive he set it up himself.
Yeah. But
I mean it's a big tent.
It is a big tent, but we live out in the woods. This man probably puts it up for fun in his backyard at least twice a week.
I bet he puts a tent up for fun. Yeah. But while he's testing the water, it has a pinkish, the pH has a pinkish tint to it.
Okay.
Which, for those who forgot high school chemistry for acidity, because...
Mm-hmm. We all did. Let's not lie to ourselves.
I totally did, too. I had to look this up. The color looks, from what I can see, is between 1 and 2, for those who don't know, is 2 is concentrated sulfuric acid, and 1 is lemon juice or vinegar. So,
just a straight shot of bad.
Yeah.
Not really great. Very health benefit level hippie bullshit water.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I do love how slowly we begin introducing, the weird color over the land, because it's not, apparent. It's all in, the mist and his flashlight and stuff.
Yeah, it's a nice subtlety without being so subtle that I think most people might miss it. It's definitely, in your face, but it's subtle.
Yeah.
Adorable. So cute.
The only thing I don't really care for in this scene, though, is, all the technology going out of sorts, And
it feels very 70s, doesn't it?
Not just that, it just feels it feels too poltergeisty instead of, levels of sentience of,
Yeah, it reminds me really hard of the old Alien movies where, the radio's messed up because we're running underneath the spaceship. It feels very much that, which granted, this is kind of an Alien movie.
It's bringing it up from, the 20s to actually almost 100 years later.
Yeah, and, I could understand, maybe a little bit, but at the same time, I don't care. It doesn't really affect them because we're not in a getaway sort of horror film.
Yeah.
It's not oh my god, I can't call the police to get away from the axe murder because the axe murder is an alien and my phone doesn't work. The only person who cares is the mom because she can't get on stocks. It's just annoying.
Yeah.
It's not really adding much.
Actually, it has a little bit tied to the dad a bit.
A bit, but the man's milking llamas out in the pasture, so I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a weird moment. But I lied again.
Tell me more.
I spent half a day writing this outline, so I forgot all the little bullshit I added to it.
No worries.
There is a reference. The book Ward is holding, even though he blocks off part of the author's name, is called The Willows.
Oh, yeah.
By Algernon Blackwood, which I have not read.
Mm-hmm.
It's from 1907, and it's an early supernatural horror tale that heavily influenced Lovecraft.
Yeah. That's a nice nod. It's cute.
There's a lot of nerdy shit in
There
this.
is. Again, you could really go kind of still by still of this movie and find something in pretty much every scene. You don't have to. You totally can get through this movie without that knowledge, but it's nice.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
And so in the morning, the meteorite is gone, but we now see some strange flowers blooming around the well.
I will say that this is kind of to me anyway, it added on to Nic Cage's character not really having an innate knowledge of the land and farm life and all that, because the flowers that they are depicting are flowers that are correct. They're the wrong color and they're out of season. And that, to a person who grew up around that area and who was raised on the land, that would have been a huge red flag.
As much as my mom planted flowers, I am very much more a vegetable produce gardener.
Which, I think is probably, honestly, a better way to get into gardening for most people. It's a little bit more straightforward, it's a little bit more fun. But we do kind of get that a little bit later on, too, because, it gets to the point where even this dumb man who, is trying to milk alpacas. I'm not gonna let this go, it's so dumb.
He is trying.
He is trying to not just milk them because, one of the calves isn't eating correctly and I can't get to the store to buy formula sort of thing. He is milking it with the aspirations of making what I can only assume is artisan cheese. Or he's putting it on his cereal, and I'm not sure which is worse.
I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, like, not for the podcast at all. I was just kind of weirded out by the fact that there is human cheese.
There is human cheese.
And there are women who use their coochie yeast to make cheese.
There's a person out there for everyone, and those are not my people. I distance myself from those mammary gland owners. I'm
morbidly curious about how weird people are, and like that's how I get down these weird rabbit holes of like, what the fuck did I just read?
If this man knew about the mammary gland cheese, this is the sort of person who would, like, without realizing how weird it is, try and market it to the world.
Yeah.
This is that kind of man.
Yeah, it's
weird.
Yeah, very
it's
weird.
weird.
Enough milk talk.
Okay.
Milk's disgusting.
It is gross.
Yeah. But now we move on to night, where the father had given an interview while the news crew was there, and
yeah, I mean,
his UFO witness report.
I appreciate that the alien bits have disappeared, and because he doesn't know about stuff, he doesn't have anything concrete to show them.
Yeah.
Like, he could totally have showed them, like, the one weird colored bug, and, like, the flower, and, like, for a small town, that would have been big news.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know, so he's just like, oh, there was an alien.
When he was out there was no flowers, and there was no bug.
That's true.
The bug is upcoming still.
That's true. I've jumped the gun. The bug is still to come.
Yeah. But, to be fair, that is part of the story, is, like, news reporters went out there, and, like, the meteor changed size. It shrunk in size.
Yes.
And even the scientists who showed up to, like, get samples, it disappeared within days.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
It is a weird meteor, but
yeah.
he didn't know how to properly explain to them without sounding like a crazy man.
But this goes into a lot of modern UFO lore.
Oh, no, I love the fact that, like, with us knowing the truth, you feel like you've been gypped of this for him. But then when you step back, you're like, this is probably what all of those other UFO people feel like.
Not just that, but there is a lot of stuff around, like, people who, like, talk about UFOs who get really into it, where it kind of ruins their life.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is a lot of, like, brief little nerd bit, alien nerd corner.
Yes.
Between Lovecraft's writing of this and now, there has been so much UFO lore that Stanley has incorporated into this movie.
And he does so very without, like, feeling too heavy-handed or Area 51-esque.
Yeah.
It feels like the underlying knowledge of Alien just that evolved naturally.
It's a very much, what's their name? The interracial couple who discovered or had, like, time loss and had, like, they were, like, the very first.
Oh, yeah, the ones with, like, they were in, like, their car, and then they couldn't explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much that. I'm horrible. I should know their names. But it's one of those moments.
They kind of kicked off the whole aliens steal you away.
Yeah, and, like, their story was consistent throughout the ages.
Yeah.
But this is just where the weirdness begins, as, at dinner, the wife is not doing so hot, and she, chops her fingers off.
Yeah, without noticing.
Which...
This is our first, like, nice little bit of, like, horror.
Yeah.
Like, proper horror.
Because this is the very good tension building. Because up until this point, it's been a little bit of high strangeness, like, family drama mystery movie.
Yeah. I will say that the finger chopping does kind of feel like a hard left turn to an extent. Because, like, yeah, the alien bit was weird. The plants were weird. But it feels like...
a rude awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, this is probably, for me, the one part of the movie where I had, like, any real, like, for me.
Yeah.
Because I was, being somewhat familiar with the short story, I was looking for more of a spiral descent into madness. And granted, there's a lot of characters here all descending into a sort of madness.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to say they should all spiral at the same time. That's fair. But from a movie writing standpoint, it felt like a very hard, like, oh, and she is suddenly off the deep end.
Okay, so here's my...
It works. It makes sense. It just wasn't what I was expecting.
Here's my brief thought of why she's the first one. Dad's drinking alpaca milk constantly.
That is true.
who knows what daughter's drinking? She might be slipping booze off the side.
She feels like the kind to steal her dad's alcohol.
Yeah, Stoner Brother is definitely getting his moisture from all the junk food or whatever the fuck he's eating.
I don't think that man has ever drank water in his life. He's drinking Mountain Dew and, like, slurping down...
He's drinking Java.
He's drinking Java.
Yeah, he's drinking mud Java.
Yeah, for sure.
So, from the mom's work, who's clearly dealing with stocks of some kind or something.
Yeah.
Actually, I should have asked Mark to watch that shit, too.
Yeah, business person.
Yeah,
Generic businessman.
Actually, yeah, Mark or Rick. But from someone who gets a very dry throat from thinking or from talking constantly.
Uh-huh.
By the way, I'm glad we don't have video because everyone would see how much water I drink during all of these recordings. She's probably drinking the most water.
Oh, probably. And also, like, it fits her character trope where she's probably, like, the more health conscious. She's the one who definitely doesn't drink, if at all. Like, maybe she's like a one glass of wine at the fancy dinner sort of gal.
Yeah,
but
she drinks the one glass while the husband guzzles the rest of the bottle.
Exactly. And, like, so it fits her stereotype to be, like, the one who's like, well, I don't just drink water, I get my 100 glasses of 8-ounce glasses of water a day. I don't mind having to pee constantly. She's that person.
I completely understand that.
She's the sort of person who doesn't just do the whole, like, gallon challenge because it's, like, a fun challenge. She just, like, legit drinks a gallon of water every day with no trouble.
Yeah.
That's just who she is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I personally like the scene.
I do too.
But it does build the tension, and it's like, oh shit, something is weird going on, because they drive to the hospital, like you said, it's an hour away.
It's quite a long drive.
Enough where they're going to be at the hospital all night.
Well, also, you chopped your own fingers off. I feel like that's just the polite thing to do.
Yeah. Which, one of our coworkers, he chopped his fingers off in an accident. I'm not going to drop names, but he showed me the photos.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to get those put back on. It's not fun.
His artificial joints. I'm glad he showed me the photos.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating as heck, but, like, try not to do it.
Yeah, I'm one of those weird people who's like, ooh, show me the gore.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just curious. But there is a part here because Cage asked the son, Benny, to check after the alpacas, and there's this weird, very Mandy-esque shot of the forest and him walking the alpacas, but it's a kind of cool scene.
Yeah, it is very Mandy-esque, though.
Yeah, because, like, he walks them, and then this is the part where I, like, really notice, like, the sibling dialogue of him showing up. Like, this is the part where it's really good of, like, they have their exchange, and he's like...
Yeah, no, the writing for me went from, like, good, kind of dipped at the dining table, and then back up to really good here.
Yeah, because, also at the scene, like, Lavinia goes to check on Jack, who is being creepy and unsettling, because Jack is whistling... To the woods. To the woods saying, oh, they're talking to me. And it's like...
Which, like...
Kids say creepy shit.
Oh, this is not even the closest to the creepiest thing I've ever been told by a child. But this is weird and creepy, and we did just have our mom chop her fingers off, so, you know, it's playing in.
I remember the creepiest thing a kid has ever said to me is my cousin Hunter.
Uh-huh.
He has mental challenges.
Uh-huh.
He likes to twirl wires.
Okay, yeah.
So I took some game wires away from him, and he just looks up at me. They will never find you. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, the best one I've ever been told was I used to teach younger kids swim lessons, right? So, like, we're learning how to float and, like, basic doggy paddle, like, nothing advanced. I had one little girl who normally was very sweet and kind look at me, and she goes, I know how you're gonna die, and then swam off. I never found out how I'm gonna die. What? I never found out. I didn't ask. I don't want to know.
Well, at least I asked my cousin. This is my second cousin, because my family... I have a family novel.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
But I asked my cousin, and she's like, he probably picked it from somewhere. I don't know where he got that, but, like, he picked it up from somewhere.
I never bothered to ask. And, I had, 4 lessons that I taught every day with groups of, 6 to 10 kids each. And honestly, the fact that one of them knew how I was going to die was just kind of a blessing at that point.
Interesting. And so, from this, Lavinia actually starts to be a little bit of a good daughter. She gets a call. There's a garbled voice on the side.
Yeah.
Begins to freak out a little bit.
I mean, like you do.
I also like this camera, how it pans out, and there's like a nice little sprinkling of like vines climbing the trees and stuff, and like the flowers are popping up everywhere in the yard now.
Yeah, it definitely adds to the whole, like, not only like start to feel the shift that is happening in the area, but also like it adds to this idea that like there is an entity moving things.
Yes, because on top of that, because flowers and stuff finds naturally.
Yeah.
We get what you mentioned earlier, a climbing of the food chain / moving into advanced organisms as we get to see a very creepy mantis. Which
yes, I love this mantis. It's for me a little bit CGI-esque.
Yeah,
but like it's fine because he's not a main part of the movie.
It's not supposed to be like hyper realism.
No, and granted, like I do have questions on where some of the CGI is going to age in a couple years. I think this is going to be one of them.
Yeah,
but it's not so bad that he's like, oh my god, I cannot watch the weird mantis movie. Like he'll just be that scene.
Yeah. Which the VFX crew mentioned, like, this was the hardest thing to do.
They had a very small budget.
Yeah, but they also did, like, high detail of, like, they got it, like, anatomically correct, too.
They did. They really did. It's just one of those uncanny valley where, like, you can tell he's kind of on top of the world.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's a good praying mantis with weird coloring, but, like, he will age faster than the monsters later, I think.
Yeah. And, well, I'll get into that a little bit because that's my favorite part of special effects.
Of course.
And also at this point, we have the transfer to further technology where the TV kind of freaks out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It adds to the spook. I don't love it. I'm not a big fan of the whole technology's not working. It's poltergeisty.
It's my same issues of like the transfer from like VHS in like The Ring to Pulse.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Don't love it, but it's fine.
Yeah. Because from here we go to Lavinia doing the chores. Cleaning up the blood from the night before still.
I mean, she's an edgy, like, rebellious daughter, but she's clearly still a good, like, she's trying to be part of the family to an extent.
Because she's been bitching about leaving this place for the whole movie.
I can't blame her. The middle of an alpaca farm is not a, like, super great place for a witchy, edgy teenage daughter.
For older witchy teenage people or older witchy people, it's perfect. She's in the new phase.
She's too new, and she's clearly not into the gardening or kitchen witchy phase.
Obsessed with the golden arches.
She's not there yet. She's not into the old magic yet. She would like to have like a group of her peers around her.
Talking about the magic of the McDonald's.
I
haven't eaten McDonald's in years.
I love McDonald's, but I have the palate of a 3-year-old who's a very adventurous eater. So I will eat a cheeseburger with nothing on it and ketchup all day, every day.
I'm a bachelor who ate 130 pizza rolls in
I ate Dino Nuggets. We've talked about this.
Yeah, we did. That's right. We have very similar palates at times. And so, from this, there is some little references here and there, because in the background we hear the television forecast mentioning Arkham, Innsmouth, Dunwich, and Kingsport, which are all Lovecraft's cities / real cities.
It's a nice tie-in.
Yeah. Building the world.
Yeah.
Because now Ward arrives after Lavinia has had a little bit of time lapse centered around water that is definitely... and she's told that the water is contaminated.
Yes. Okay. I will accept, to a degree, their actions because everyone's already had the contaminated water and we were spiraling. However, the amount of times that they are told, hey, your water's bad, don't drink it. Water's contaminated, don't drink it. This water is acidic, don't drink it. And they continue to drink the water.
No, this is their only warning. The only warning given to the entire family is him to Lavinia, who is not feeling very well.
Fair, but like, this feels like an important note.
This is something someone of authority tells a teenager, hey, don't do this, and they promptly forget it.
fair, but I don't like it. Because she's already been proven to be a responsible teenager, she's just rebellious.
Yeah.
And she's not rebellious in the whole, like, I wish my family was dead. She clearly doesn't. She, like, is dabbling in magic. She probably would have tried the whole, like, death by family thing.
Yeah.
But she's just edgy. It's
also someone she has a lady boner for.
That's true. I feel like that would make it more important.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point, is, like, I think I put it up to she's not feeling good.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, we've all had that stuff where, like, you forget what you've done because you're sick.
I'll take it.
Okay.
I don't like it, but I will accept.
Alright. It works.
It does work.
Yeah, because Ward is now off to visit Ezra, who is, being Ezra, as Hobbs looks at me weirdly, too.
Yes. Tell him, Hobbs.
Because Ezra is, hearing shit, and he's recording it on Memorex.
Yeah, I mean, again, extra technology bit, little ghosty, little classic alien-y, but it's fine.
I lied again.
Uh-huh.
I am a horrible fucking liar.
Uh-huh, tell me all about it. Tell me about the recording system that he's using.
I did, real quick, I did a lot, I did too much deep diving. This is why this took me like 5 hours to write this stupid outline. Because I didn't know this either. Memorex was a computer tape producer that was one of the biggest suppliers that ended up becoming a consumer that existed between 1961 and 1996. That's my weird little technology history side tangent.
It is interesting, but
it doesn't matter.
It does not matter at all.
It's tape. It's like VHS. I don't give a shit.
Fact.
It's done. I'm sorry I lied. I've lied like 5 times now.
It's okay. I expect at least 2 more.
You're probably right. And so from here, despite his warnings, Ezra's gonna be Ezra.
Yeah.
We cut to the dad driving the mom home as he continues to sing.
Yeah. I mean, he's trying to be a good sport, but he's not catching the vibes.
Yeah, there is successful surgery as they're driving through tinted mist.
Yeah, spooky.
But what do they find? Someone found the G-spot.
Yes, the poor cat.
A mutated G-spot.
Yes.
And they proceed to freak the fuck out.
I will say, for the stills of it, not scary. It in film, very scary.
Yeah.
It's a good, like, oh my gosh, what is it? Moment, because it's not, like, standing too much. It's there, it's gone, I'm happy. If we had focused on it.
It just makes me think of a goopy sphinx.
It does look like a sphinx with a skin condition.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, a little scary. Tiny bit scary.
It's a hairless cat.
I mean, they do look like little ball sacks. Now you have to imagine ball sacks running around your house at night. I
mean, I've watched, I just remembered a video I sent my brother of a dude with testicular cancer that looked like the, ball sacks from South Park.
Yeah, the wheelbarrow man.
Dude could barely stand, and it was very disturbing. And his response is, "Why the fuck did you send me that?" Yeah.
This is that cat.
Yeah. I get it now. Kay. Kind of.
It's a small bit scary. Not a lot, just a little bit. Mostly because up until this, we've had she chopped her own fingers off, which is a different kind of scary. We weren't in monster realm yet.
It's like slasher horror versus like alien horror.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, weird fusion of like horror elements.
This is a interesting blur.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's stuck itself into Lovecraft horror.
Yeah, it's undescribable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we are on the move as the weird color continues to happen as the parents arrive home and are quite disappointed in their children.
How dare they not put the alpacas away?
Jack is wandering alone. Oh, I see. While the cats are away, the mice shall play.
Nar.
Yeah, very...
It's a little stiff, but it's fine.
It's cheesy as shit.
Oh, yeah.
And, at this moment, because Nic Cage is pulling very much a Vampire's Kiss performance.
I'm glad you noticed, because I also noticed.
Which I started getting inklings of it at the singing part.
Uh-huh, yeah, me too.
Which, I learned supposedly Richard Stanley's favorite Cage role is Vampire's Kiss and asked him to give a similar performance
You know
style.
what? That makes a lot of sense because while Nic Cage, a lot of people feel has like a style to his crazy, which he does, but I would say that especially if you're like looking deep, he's never really repeated himself too often. He's always similar, but he goes to like a different style of his crazy Cage self for his different insane roles. This is the only one for me that stood out as like, oh, this is very similar to the one you played over here.
Yeah.
Like, a lot similar. Not just like, oh, you're also Nic Cage.
There's one in the upcoming movie we're reviewing, too.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but like, he tries hard not to repeat himself too much.
Yeah, and for the most part, he does a pretty good job.
There's only so many ways you can be Nic Cage losing your mind.
Yeah, this is very different. This is a different kind of freak out compared to, like, the Mandy freak out.
Yes, this is very different. I don't know if I like it better or not, to be honest.
I still think that his underwear screaming in the bathroom
was so
is
good.
The performance of a lifetime.
It was pinnacle losing your mind crap, and I loved it. This is also good, but it does bring a little bit extra Nic Cagey. Yeah. Yeah. But honestly, I can see how maybe that would be a good thing, because it turns this from just cosmic horror into campy cosmic horror. Yeah. Which is a nice little, like, bonus.
Yeah, yeah. And so, in the house, the dad realized I fucked up a little bit. Side note, bad table placement.
Yeah.
Yeah, just little design thing of, like, it's good in a movie sense, like, that it gives some little bit of motion to him entering the door.
Yeah, but, like, it's dumb.
It's obnoxious.
Yeah, not where I would put that.
No.
Oh, well.
But while he's in there, he, finds something in the drain, a very clear blob that, spreads out worm-like.
I know that it was supposed to be, like, the alien blob, but it just looked too much to me like a dead jellyfish my mom once picked up off of the beach.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is scary. Don't pick up dead jellyfishes. But it was I mean, it's a nice, like, work our way up to, but we had just had the gross cat. This feels like the step before the gross cat.
Yeah, you're right there.
It's not bad. It's just we already had the cat.
Yeah, it's just a weird transition back and forth between horror elements.
Yeah, I feel like if we'd started with the blob and then moved to the cat, I feel like I would have been like, aha, we're building to...
I get it, because we've talked about it a little bit, where, like, it's climbing the hierarchy. The slime, well...
To me, slime is always the bottom tier.
The slime should have been before the mantis.
Like, just a blob somewhere. Someone could have stepped in it and been like, ew, a llama loogie. And I would have been like, okay.
Yeah,
that's
insect,
not how llamas work, but
mammal,
okay.
blah, blah. Yeah, which,
It's also, we're so ingrained with video game logic, too. Like, blobs, scary, bottom tier.
Yeah.
They can still be bad, we learned this. Blob is bad, but it's a blob.
Yeah. Side note, correction a little bit from our last episode where we were just talking about worms.
Yes, tell me about the worms.
Well, Laffenstein informed me that sea cucumbers do the whole gut spilling stuff as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
I used to really like sea cucumbers. I do not anymore like sea cucumbers.
Well, yeah, the part where I learned that there's a fish living in a lot of their buttholes.
Yeah, that wasn't what turned me off. It's because I think in my head they feel similar to the squishy, like, activity toys in the 90s.
Oh, the one that a lot of guys equate to fleshlights now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has, like, usually sea creatures in it and, like, goop. I'm sure they don't, but in my head they feel like that thing, and thus I no longer like sea cucumbers.
Textured for your pleasure.
Yes. And the texture is nope.
Yeah. Side note, I wrote in here to plug Laffenstein. I'm sorry that this is where I'm plugging you, man.
I'm not.
Yeah, you know us by now, so check out Laffenstein. This is the second time we talked about him in the episode. Great horror streamer. He's fun to hang out with and stuff. He's a real hoot.
Yes.
Yeah. Very informative about Dead by Daylight too.
Yes.
Yeah, so anywho, from the goopy jellyfish thing, which is still creepy and gross.
Yeah, it's still creepy and gross.
Jack is still freaking out, stating that their dog Sam is gone. Just like G-Spot.
Yeah, I will say this is the part where the sound design for me started to go from, like, interesting horror to, like, just ouch. But for my husband, it was the other way around. Because this is the spot where the dog runs off, it moves from, like, musical to having high tones. And my husband really liked the, like, addition of these extra high tones, because it kind of implies, like, a level of crazy, and also, like, driving animals crazy, even though, like, realistically we can't hear, like, the high enough note for the dog. It, like, implies it.
Realistically, I did not catch on to this at all.
I really, really like the music for this film.
Okay.
It does a really nice job of being both a musical score that was released by itself in album form, but also having the horror notes of, like, just noise, pretending to be music, which I also like, but is done.
Okay.
Like, it's what I expect from a horror film. This one blended the two, which is common for a horror/alien flick, but this one did so in such a way that, for me, really liked at the beginning, wasn't a huge fan of the super, like, high plus low notes happening from, like, here up until the end, but my husband really liked it, because it had the desired effect.
Yeah, it's got the dynamic range that he's looking for and
exactly.
stuff.
And I didn't like it because it made my ears hurt. He liked it because it made his ears hurt. So it did its job. It was too much.
And my musical dumbass is just here like, huh, interesting.
Yeah, but this is some solid musical work, because it's all by one composer. I'll tell you about it, but my computer has died. He does a lot of, like, saxophone work. That's his, like, main call is saxophone. Yes. Yeah. But he does a lot of work with bands, so he's a musician and also a composer, which I think helps for especially indie horror.
Okay.
Because he has a really good grasp of, like, what each sound for each area is going to feel like.
I may or may not have looked into him, and I think I wrote something at the end, so I might have something for you
That'd
later
be great, because I forgot my charger.
It's all good. We are so planned.
So prepared.
And so, from here, we cut to the morning where the father is harvesting his crops, which we clearly see are infected.
Yes, the tomatoes. He's got tomatoes.
Yeah, as
every first gardener does.
Tomatoes are a pain in the ass.
They are, but, like, even if your tomato plant's almost dead, you're gonna get, like, one tomato. It's a very forgiving producer. It will try its damnedest to get you a tomato, even if it dies.
My parents had a shit ton of wheat this year.
That's nice.
Yeah, their tomatoes didn't do well.
I mean, I feel like wheat's more useful.
Yeah, and so, we know the crops are infected. He's oblivious.
Oh, he's so oblivious, because not only are the crops infected, but they're, like, too big, and they're a whole month early.
Yeah.
And he's just like, wow, what lucky.
Yeah, they're bland, they taste disgusting, they're
not the correct ripeness. Like, they're too ripe on the inside, but they're the right ripeness on the outside, which is weird.
Well, so, and I'll relate this back from the story, is that in the story, they don't have, they're not pleasant to taste at all. Like, they're not right. They're bad. They're bad. They're just not good.
Yeah. It's bad fruit.
It's like,
somehow fucked it up. Not sure how.
It's kind of like how we fucked up the Red Delicious apple. It's that kind of thing where, like, the fruit is ripe, but
it's wrong.
You can't eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also at this time, because he's freaking the fuck out, Teresa comes in like, can you fix the dish? And this is like the last little bit of family drama as it comes to a head. It's
a nice little bit because it does play off of Nic Cage's, like, specialty with acting, where, like, the father finally snapping is kind of one of his, like, peak moments in most movies. Yeah. And so this is a good scene, but it does feel similar to other things in the past. Not bad, but, like, you're gonna watch this and be like, oh, I know where this is feeling.
It feels very close to early Cage because...
Again, that's what he likes to do.
Yeah, and Stanley specifically requested that kind of performance.
Yeah, and you get that feeling again.
Yeah. And now, Nathan turns to drinking, which is why we got to the whiskey, because he is kind of getting sick. He's got a little bit of a skin rash that he's using the the ice to kind of soothe.
See, okay, I'm glad you said ice, because I watched him put his hand in his whiskey glass, and I thought he was trying to use the whiskey to cure it.
I think it's the water floating on the whiskey.
Okay, that makes more sense to me, because I was like, who in their right mind wastes whiskey on their weird ouchie?
The one who is using cheap whiskey.
Okay, I'll take it.
And you are right. This is lie number 1 of potentially future 2.
Tell me more about the whiskey.
I'm not talking about the whiskey. There's a weird science reference in here, because someone graciously pointed out on IMDb, because I tried figuring it out and I had no clue. The photo of Nathan's father on the side table is a young Robert E. Howard, creator of Conan the Barbarian and a contributor to the Cthulhu mythos.
I love Conan the Barbarian, as we all, of course, probably know.
Yeah.
So I am pleased by this reference.
Yeah, it is. It's a good reference.
It is a good reference, and it also, like, ties in nicely, because it is a familiar enough face that the audience is going to go, yeah, that's definitely his dad.
Yeah, I was looking at him like, that's not Lovecraft. Like, who? Because, to be fair, in most weird science, I'm mainly Lovecraft knowledge.
Sure.
But it was just like one of those things of like me mentally trying to like make the gymnastics of
to
equate the two, and it's like that's not him.
No,
he doesn't have the very I've got a shit look face on him.
That's true.
Yeah. And so after this, Lavinia is packing up, and we can see the house itself is now fully infested with color.
Yes. Which we're starting to get to the point where, like, the visuals are catching up with the color correction that that they're doing. So it's starting to get to the point where we're moving out of the subtlety and into the more, like, proper horror elements.
Yeah, this is where stuff really begins to spiral down, because we start to see Lavinia start some cleansing ritual that I wasn't super versed in to like understand, and I didn't see anyone who's actually talked about it.
To me, it looked like a very rushed, loose interpretation of a demonic cleansing, but like not quite right. It feels like she kind of maybe pulled this one out of her butt.
It felt very, it felt something like something out of Supernatural, kind of. They made up their own lore for the cleansing.
Which is fine.
Yeah, because at this point, Benny and Jack find out there's baying of the alpacas, and they discover what I'm going to call the Alpaca King, in reference to for those who don't know, the Rat King, which is a collective of rats whose tails have been intertwined and bound together.
Which is the inspiration for the one from the Nutcracker, but that was a giant rat.
I'm thinking older. Like it's very prophetic. It's very not prophetic, prevalent in German lore.
It is, and that's where the Nutcracker got the original.
Okay, I see now.
It's okay.
Mental gymnastics for me.
It's all right. I forget that not everyone watches it every year. With the extra credits.
I've only seen that one recent one we watched last year.
Oh, that one's terrible. That one's garbage. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting there like, what the fuck is this?
I'm so sorry. We will watch the correct one, the Barbie edition.
Okay.
That one's also garbage. I apologize. It's good garbage.
We are the good, the bad, and the weird.
It's arguably the best Barbie movie.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. But this is why I like this part, because this is where we start really seeing like the practical effects.
Yes, I totally agree. The practical effects really good.
Yes, because the Alpaca King is a scale model and puppet.
Yes, and he looks so gushy.
It is also what I use this logos as a basis for.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah, I love
Very squishy alpaca.
Yeah.
With too many bits.
But this is also like the really first time we actually see the color actively moving, because for the most part it's been passive.
Yeah, and
because we start to see it emanate from the Alpaca King.
And honestly, this is the first time where you're reminded that this is its own entity. Mm-hmm. We got the alien egg meteor, disappeared, kind of went back to like, oh, it's just like magic in the land, and now we're getting the idea that the color itself is potentially a thing.
Got it. Mm-hmm. It's like watching ice melt into water.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Where you kind of forget that the ice already is water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just solid water.
Yes. Crunchy. Crunchy water.
That's one way to put it.
Crispy water.
That's just iceberg lettuce.
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
But, because at this point, Benny and Jack are chased by it, and it actually attacks them because it hits Teresa and Jack, Mom Teresa.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've said her name. Because, like, and we start to see them, like, something's happening to them as Lavinia comes down as only I can describe as a DIY emo vision from the Marvel Universe.
But actually...
I found the thing on her forehead's a rune of some kind.
It is. It's meant to be a protection one. She either didn't really understand what she was trying to do, or...
DIY emo vision.
Yeah. She either didn't understand what she was trying to do, she didn't understand the deal with whom she was making, which is a huge part of it, is knowing who you're making the deal with. She definitely didn't know that.
Yeah.
And, like, she probably didn't fully understand, like, the full aspect of, like, the conditions part of it. The reading the terms and conditions is a huge part of what they're trying to portray her as. So she drew a cute rune on her forehead, thinking that it's going to protect her. Does it?
Interesting way to say cutting into her flesh.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing.
Drawing. Interesting.
Yeah, it depends on how, like, emo you are.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
She's trying really hard to create something more permanent and long-lasting.
Okay.
She, again, didn't read the terms and conditions.
Very DIY witchy.
Yeah.
Which I don't think the color has anything to deal with her. It's just her trying to understand the
There
universe.
is kind of an interesting conversation you could have there on whether or not she, like...
accidentally summoned it of some kind, yeah.
Or if, like, she didn't do anything, and, like, she doesn't understand that, and, like, that's just part of this.
Yeah.
They don't say. It's fun either way.
Yeah. So, from here, because the mom, we learned that Teresa and Jack are fused together now.
Yeah, they got, like, Jack coming out of her body in, like, a weird angle.
He's coming out of her back like, there's a creature in Silent Hill. I think it's called the Twins. No. The twins are the ones that are fused at the head, and they just got big arms.
Yeah, honestly, the fusion part for this movie does feel very Silent Hill-esque, but with more squish.
Yeah, very body horror.
Very body horror, a lot more, like, liquidy bits.
Yeah, very, very much like something from The Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in the morning, Nathan tries starting the car, but freaks out in another very great Cage moment.
Yes.
And honestly, I do think it is a great freak out moment. I mean...
No, it is. It moves into the campy region once again, but, like, that's Cage.
Yeah.
And because this is a horror indie film, a horror indie film.
A horror indie film. That sounds like Necropolis.
Eventually we'll get to one of those, I'm sure.
We will.
But because of that, I expect and want that from my Nic Cage freakout.
Yeah.
So I am very pleased I got it.
Yeah. No, it's very much the shining moment for Cage in this movie.
Yes,
for
very
the
much.
most part.
And, like, it feels appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, his family just mooshed together into one big blob.
Yeah, his wife and his son
are now one, and then the alpacas that he loved so dearly, also one big blob.
I don't think he's seen them yet. I think they've told him.
I think they've told him, and, like, this is the sort of sensitive man who that would be enough.
Yeah, because they decide to move the mask to the attic.
I don't... Not my preferred place to put the weird blob person, but okay.
Out of sight, out of mind.
That feels very much correct.
Yeah.
It also feels like a lot of work to get them up into the attic.
Well, and on top of that, so this is a great point in the movie where they slow down the movie a bit between what's just happened and what's to come. It's for us to process it and get a regrounding of what's happening.
And we're also starting to deal with some time wibbly-wobbly shit in the background happening.
Nice Doctor Who reference.
Yes, thank you.
But yeah, because at the same time, like, Nathan has said he's going to take care of the alpacas, which he does.
Yeah.
As the siblings try and take care of the Teresa and Jack mask, which I love this part of the killing of the alpacas. Yeah,
it feels correct, but it also is a nice lead up to, like, we've already got one combined thing. We've got another one hiding in the attic. what's your solution?
Yeah, which, at the same time, why don't they give him a straw?
I don't know.
It's this weird moment of, like...
I don't know.
Yeah, but I also like this part, too, because when he comes back, they're like, well, we're going to take care of your mom and Jack. We'll take care of them like you took care of the alpacas.
Which, I appreciate the direction that they decided to go with, because this was kind of an, like, inevitable, like, we were going to have to be here at this question. I appreciate that they were, like, they bothered to play with the question more than just, like, him yes or knowing it immediately.
Yeah.
Like, him getting up there and being like, well, this is the humane way. Like, you're not, this isn't good.
Yeah.
You can't be like this. But I am crazy, and B, I love you too much.
Yeah.
So, because of that, I will feed my other child to you.
Later on. Yeah, kind of, not even really. There's a little bit more to that.
There's a little gap in between that, but the spiral has escalated. We are no longer slowly slipping into madness. We are full on headlong jumping out the plane.
Yeah, because this movie is very unbalanced in its pacing.
Yeah, which for some people was kind of an issue.
Yeah.
I could see how for some, too much. For others, feels like a great descent movie.
Yeah. Because from this, we cut to the city where Ward, who hasn't been in the movie for like a good hour...
You kind of forgot about him.
Has gone to warn the mayor and is, who's freaking out.
I mean, but for reason, we assume for the same reasons. Freaking out for a different reason.
Yeah. Who is, directed by them, who is, meets up with the sheriff, who, with a local hunter, has, found some fucked up animals, and, we finally learn the fate of G-Spot.
Yeah.
Poor
cat.
They all fused together like some mass, and they couldn't get away, so we killed them.
Yeah. And I don't know if we've mentioned the subplot of the mayor yet. The mayor is hoping to create a giant reservoir to, like, water the entire area with.
Or no, it's a dam.
Yeah.
To get a water reserve.
Which would include their property.
Mm-hmm. Which
won't be problematic at all now that there's the weird demon cat.
Well, I mean, the hunter killed that pussy.
Yeah, so according to the mayor, we're good.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, he brings up it looks like radiation burns, which, remember, this story was written before Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
And on top of that, like, this radiation at the time where Lovecraft was writing was very much like a mystery science.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Hulk turned into the Thing because of the mystery science.
We hit this spider with gamma rays, and now this man can shoot webs from his wrists.
And not his butt, which would be more anatomically correct. But
we gotta keep it family friendly a little bit. We can't just show a brown starfish shooting spider webs.
That would be worse.
That would make it a true horror movie.
Yes, it would. I'm sure somewhere there's a Spider-Verse where that's the case. But
chocolate starfish, that's the right word.
There we go. But it is an interesting play on, like, making sure the rest of the world is involved in the madness, because up until them going outside, you could make the argument that the madness is contained into this family.
Yeah, into the farmland. It hasn't spread a mile out to the city.
And you could also, like...
Or an hour out.
Yeah, and you could also make the argument that, like, it's in their head, the meteor hit them, it infected them, But no, we are confirmed this is a problem for everybody.
Yeah. Also, side little note that's not actually mentioned in the movie, but it's mentioned in the credits. The sheriff is I think it's Nathan's brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a gardener.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because we now cut back to night where, at the gardeners, where Benny and Lavinia are going to leave the farm via horse, but the horse freaks out. Also, the horse's name is Comet.
Classic name, kind of like naming your dog Ruff. Why not?
Also... slight tongue-in-cheek on...
A little bit tongue-in-cheek on the whole, like, meteor alien...
color out of space.
A little bit.
Cosmic.
I appreciate that they, like, are creative enough to be like, well, we can't drive, so let's get on the horse.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's, good thinking.
Yeah, it's good thinking. And it's nice bringing the horse back in from the beginning.
Yeah, which would have been arguably a sizable plot hole.
Yeah.
So I feel like this was well thought through.
Yeah. Well, as much as that part was thought through, Benny is called to the well by the whines of Sam. Oh, he proceeds to climb down the well, says, "It smells like something died down here."
Yeah, because your dog definitely died down there, man.
And his dumbass is consumed by the color.
But you know what? He's finally with his dog, so rest in peace, Sam and child.
And Lavinia is pulled into the house by Nathan, where he forces her into the room to take care of the mother and son.
You know, so they can be one big happy family again.
Who are even more fused together.
They are starting to get real blobby.
Yes, I like it.
It is a very nice effect. And
yes.
I think this is part of the effects section that we were talking about earlier, where, like, this sort of part of the movie with the horror is going to, like, make it and last and look really good. And it's the little details where they didn't have time or the money to really, like, polish.
Or it was just it was an expensive shot to begin with.
Exactly.
Effect. Yeah.
And, like, we have our one really expensive shot coming up, and we did use a lot of our money on that.
Oh, and I don't blame them.
No, me either. I'm really glad it's in there.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of hoping that means later on we do get a larger budget for maybe more.
We'll get into that a bit.
Exactly.
Because from this, we cut to Ward and the sheriff heading to the farm, where they see the horse running, and now it's time to turn on the sirens and drive a little bit faster.
Yeah, maybe we should go faster.
Yeah, because now we cut back to Nathan drinking as the mass is trying to kind of consume Lavinia, but Ward and sheriff arrive just in time.
Yeah, and we finally really get to see Nicolas Cage's character descend into the thing he truly feared, which was becoming his alcoholic dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, to the point where, like, he spiraled so far that they're like, "Where's the rest of your family?" He's like, "Oh, they're here.
They're here.
They're hanging out up in the attic. My son lives in the well."
Yeah.
No, he's fine. He likes it in there.
That's also a tie to the original movie, or the original story, because the mom and the youngest are up there. One of the kids goes to the well.
Yeah, it's really nice tie-in.
Yeah.
And it also, like, really does nicely
bring it up to modern age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so also I like this part too, because the creature is even more creepy as Backjack is mimicking the screams.
Yes.
And I honestly feel a bit bad for Lavinia. Like,
yeah,
she's kind of just...
She's not having a great time. No, she gets to be goopy.
Yeah, because as the group tries to leave, the color starts to leave the well, but they retreat back to the house and just kind of leaves them.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that part, but okay.
Yeah, because...
I like that it kind of adds a level of, like...
Threatening,
but also, like, intelligence to the color.
Yeah.
Like, it feels more alive now.
But not really, because, like, Lavinia is like, "Oh, I'm going to stay here with my family," as Ward and the sheriff go to find Ezra, who's been turned into a husk for the color.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, which sheriff is killed by the tree.
Surprise, sheriff's
Shocker.
dead.
Which I do like that they're kind of like they're making nods to, like, the true cosmic horror of what the creature's trying to do, as it's altering the environment to its liking, which is kind of funny because that's what exactly humans do.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a play on a lot of...
But we complain when other creatures do it on our turf.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to turn to Plob.
Yeah, it's a nice little nod.
It is.
But on their way out, the sheriff is killed by trees, and Ward finds Lavinia, who is fully infested with the color.
Very not okay. Not doing good.
This is one of the coolest shots, though.
It really is.
Because, like, unlike Ezra, who, like, just kind of implodes, she has that very vision rune glow, and, like...
She feels like the last piece the color needed to, like, finally, like, let everyone see what it would like for the future.
It's like that last 6 pizza rolls you have in a bag where it's like, "I'm full, but I need the rest of them.
I already cooked them."
Yeah, exactly. But, wow, Charlie, I'm aware. I'm so excited for next week when daylight savings happens and it's going to be brighter.
So
you
hungry, the
asshole.
sun is down.
Yeah, so hungry. But I do like this part because this is where when Ward touches Lavinia, he's shown a vision of the color's world.
Yes, which I like a lot.
Which is a writhing mass of textures or tentacles and fractured abstract architecture.
Yes,
which
and it feels like your standard chaos alien otherworld, but it also feels correct for this alien.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times we get the chaos otherworld and you're like, no two-legged sentient being is living on this world, but a color blob totally lives on this world.
Yeah, a color blob of tentacles of some kind.
Definitely lives on this world, 100%.
Which, in the special features, they show like an overshot of like the wireframing. There is Cthulhu statues in it.
I love it.
There are nice little nods that are hidden by the writhing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so, now Ward flees as Nathan tries to like stop him and fight him because there's a really like creepy paranormal part where like he's talking like the house is full of like the energy of the dead where like
they're all squished into one at this point.
Yeah, because they're and that's the thing with like the color is like they're dead but they're not dead.
No, they're
like
they're part of the color now.
Yeah, exactly. And I love this moment. And like I love this like weird like blurring effect as he's trying to get away, but as like the color is being warped and he's being his color is being pulled into the color and like
this is where we spent most of our money.
It's beautiful. It's
very visually good.
It is fantastic because Ward escapes to the cellar that gets away. I will say I think he gets away because it's stone lined. Stone's not very organic.
Yeah. So I'll take it, but also like we don't really know the full intelligence of color, so like maybe it doesn't know how basements work.
Maybe. I mean, it's been in a well, so
wells aren't basements. Wells have a straight shot up. This one has a door.
It's a straight shot up with the door with the blocking.
Maybe it doesn't know how the blocking works.
It's a stupid color.
It might be a stupid color.
I'll go with that. It's a stupid color. Because Ward wakes up in a now gray and ashen world, very much like Silent Hill.
It is very Silent Hill-y.
Where we flash forward to the dam now built as Ward, now old and grayed, is warning about the water and how...
because now that there's no family living here, it's super easy to buy all their property.
Yeah, well, and also at the same time he's talking... we kind of forgot that this whole story is in the past, because now he's talking about, like, hardly anyone remembers the days of the blasted heath.
Which does kind of do a double imply of, like, either this wasn't covered very well, or everyone collectively have forgotten except for him.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
And the old-timers are all dead and have moved on, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of those questions where, like, we don't get a hard answer, and, like, I'm okay with that. Yeah. It doesn't really matter. We have a forever sense of presence with this thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting science fiction tale.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that's The Color Out of Space, the movie. Which, upon its release, it was mixed reviews.
Yeah, but that's a bit to be expected with a Lovecraftian.
Yeah. It financially did well.
Yes, it did.
I mean, it was mainly praised for, like, the acting, the artistry, but, like we mentioned, the pacing was complained about, and it was just the back and forth nature of the movie, which isn't for everyone.
No, and they also were having to deal with, the original one dealt with a lot more time warping than
it took years.
It did. And this one tries to incorporate the time warping, but it is hard to follow at times.
And the way it does time warping in this one is it cuts back and forth between, like, daytime, nighttime, nighttime. Like, it takes place over, like, a week.
Yeah, and it is hard to catch that unless you, like, come in with a little bit of pre-knowledge, which you shouldn't necessarily need.
No.
But I can see how someone who doesn't come in with that knowing would be like, this is weirdly paced. Because it does feel weirdly paced, but that has a basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little odd.
But, honestly, I personally think it's one of the best Lovecraftian movies that at least I've seen, and especially in the more recent films, like, they like, oh yeah, we're gonna do a Lovecraft movie. Cool, and then they just kind of, like, fuck off at the end.
Yeah, I will say, I do think that the true, like, essence of Lovecraftian horror is definitely starting to come into its own.
Yeah.
And this movie is definitely solidifying that to me, like, we managed to create off of one of the short stories, not even one of the longer ones.
Yeah.
A good representation of it without having a direct translation.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Well, I think there's something that Cage said, that horror is the best genre to get abstraction.
Oh, for sure.
Because horror is very much an abstract concept. Like,
yes.
Because everything is different from one person to the other, and then on top of that, like, how do you describe, like, something in the dark.
Definitely. And I think the other thing where this did really well and is like laying down the stones for movies to come, not just from them directly, but just this genre in general, is they chose, instead of trying to push for a large budget, like huge release, this was a limited release. It wasn't in a lot of theaters.
Yeah.
It was very much a indie horror film, which the indie horror crowd is usually already accustomed to Lovecraft horror.
Yeah.
They already kind of know what to expect. And also, they're much more willing to be open-minded to, like, a cosmic horror.
And we've talked about that a lot, of, like, where the next generation of good horror movies and just good movies in general are coming from these indie scenes, because
For sure.
Hollywood can't get their shit together.
No, because let's be real. If Hollywood had tried to produce this film, they would have tried to iron out the timeline problem. They would have tried to have more bits from the original content, which wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
And they would have wanted to, like, add more character development, which we don't need. I don't really care about these people.
Yeah.
And I'm not supposed to.
Yeah, what was it? I think it was my buddy Shane who sent it to me. Also, now a streamer too, Sexual Hero. Check him out. I love his name.
Very good.
He said, I think it was Patton Oswalt was like writing a screenplay, and he was bitching about like the coffin that kills or something.
Yes.
Some like shitty movie of like he described like how difficult it was, like because it goes through like a 2-year review process of like someone saying some shit of like, well, this person said this in this scene, and then they're eating Snickers 2 scenes later. How does that relate? And it's like, who gives a flying fuck? They're unrelated.
Or, like what we've discussed with our last Silent Hill review, they go, hey, we notice there's not a lot of guys in this film. We just feel like the audience, who's mostly going to be guys, would really like to see more guys.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, now you've fucked with the film.
Yeah.
That probably would have happened to this, and so I'm glad that this was an indie film that was limited release, but also had Nic Cage's name attached to it, because it did make it so that people who are, like us, following him in his career, which surprisingly is a larger number than I thought, made it kind of accessible. It's at least something that if you have a horror friend, you can be like, hey, want to see Nic Cage's newest horror film? Yeah.
And by extent, Spectrovision, too,
yes,
because,
exactly.
like, I'm starting to follow more of their stuff, because I'm curious.
I am invested at this point.
Yeah, like, I've seen, like, 3 or 4 of their movies, and I want to see more.
Very much so. Yeah. I'm very excited for what they create.
Unfortunately for the future, Stanley has mentioned that he wanted to do an H.P. Lovecraft trilogy, with the Dunwich Horror being the next project, which would be a great one.
It would be really cool.
But we shall see, because as of March of this year, the screenwriter Scarlett Aramis, who wrote the screenplay with this for him, alleged an abusive relationship back in 2013 in a blog post, and Spectrovision announced it would no longer work with Stanley and canceled all future involvement in the trilogy. As well, they announced the future revenue from the movie will go to anti-domestic violence charities.
Well, I appreciate that.
But we will see, because I have a feeling they jumped the gun a little bit. And I'm not going to get too into that. There's a lot of stuff that's for another episode,
for sure.
But we will see what happens, because just a few days ago, on the 25th, Stanley filed criminal complaints for libel and harassment against her. So
yeah, we'll see how it pans out. But to be honest, if it's from him or the studio, honestly, I'd be interested in either. I'm definitely of the mindset of, like, I don't really follow people for people's sake. Otherwise,
it's Spectrovision just trying to cover their ass for any potential.
Yeah, and which, to be fair,
flashback.
is probably the appropriate response for this scenario.
Yeah.
But whether or not he breaks off from them and does his own thing, or they continue on and find someone else, I would be very interested in seeing either, because honestly, we've seen stuff from both them and from him that I was impressed with. Yeah. So, more Lovecraftian would be great.
Yeah, no, and I'm excited. I mean, I think Stanley is going to bounce back.
Probably.
I mean,
it's Hollywood. Most people do.
Yeah, and I mean, he has the love, he has the passion. Someone else is going to pick up his work.
Oh, for sure. And also, even if he doesn't continue on, the road has already been paved for the Lovecraftian to be revived. And while not doing Hollywood-level success, is doing well.
Yeah.
It's being received well, people are understanding it well, and for the most part, the people who they care about, the audience, like, really is into it. They've won several awards for not just this film, but most of the Lovecraft films that we've seen, or style films that we've seen recently, have, for their audience, done really well. And for most of these indie films, that's what's important to them.
Yeah, and specifically I'm thinking of like The Void, or which I found out the guy who did that also directed Psycho Goreman.
There you go.
Which, check out both of those movies. Psycho Goreman's super fun. My dad hated it, but I loved it.
That's a sign of a solid movie.
Yes. I mean, my dad likes bad horror movies like me too. So,
yeah,
but,
for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think this is really like the start in opening up of like more mainstream cosmic horror.
For sure.
Because honestly, Psycho Goreman and The Void kind of went a little bit under the radar.
Yeah, definitely.
Specifically The Void. But yeah, I mean, it's there. We have the groundwork. This is more than a proof of concept. This is the fact that, hey, this can be done and this can be done well.
For sure.
Just don't read into it too much.
Yeah. Unless you've owned it and now you're going to watch it every week. Then start Googling.
I am not that bad. I am not that bad. I do just highly recommend it. So, I mean, yeah, we've talked about really recommending it and watching it, especially if you like this kind of genre. And I swear, this will be our last horror film until February.
For a little while.
Till February.
Yeah.
But as we've, in our past couple of years, is this on a Cage meter?
Oh, on a Cage meter.
Is this primo Cage, like a 10 out of 10 Cage, or is this kind of like, yeah?
For me, this is a solid 8 on 10 Cages.
Okay.
A really good performance, a really good spiral into madness. I personally am not a huge fan of having him try and rework past Cage moments. They do work, they're fine, they're nice nods to his previous roles, but I didn't feel like a movie that was trying to help lay groundwork for future styling choices really needed to lend itself to Vampire Kiss.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually rank it more of like a 7 out of 10 Cage on the Cage scale, because it breaks into that role that it's that point where, like, yes, it is Cage. It is a very Cage role.
It is very Cage.
But it's not too cagey. Like, there's that parts where, like, the in-between is what makes it not super Cage. It's just, if it's the freakouts that really make it the Cage role. If it had been anything else, you probably could have picked another actor and would have been but then again, we wouldn't be reviewing it at this point.
Very true. I also think that for me anyway, part of the most recent joy of finding Cage films that are off of his top like 5 has been seeing him be willing to put in his 2 cents and direction into the film. Yeah. And while he did a great job, this was not the film that he put direction into. Yeah. He was very much part of this as an actor and willing to take a more traditional role there, which is fine, and he did good. But I'm very much more interested in when he comes to a director with his own vision of the character. Well,
and that's the thing too, is like, from this and the next episode, I think it depends on like the special features and the behind the scenes things you see, because
I'm sure he did to an extent.
Because that's the thing about Cage, is he is such a involved actor and just willing to experiment and try anything to push the performance.
Definitely, but this one definitely felt more of the director's accord than past films.
It was less ad-lib than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and it definitely didn't feel like he was stretching his Nic Cage legs.
No. I mean, it was good. It's a good performance.
It was very good, but for me, a solid 7-8.
Yeah, 7 for me. Watch it. It's great.
Very good.
Special effects are fantastic. Cage is fantastic. The whole cast is fantastic.
Very much so. And visually, delight. Music, very good. Like, overall, a great film.
Yeah. Highly recommend this one. So, but, yeah. Anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.